Hi, I'm McMillin. I'm back again. This time I'm going to be showing you how to rebuild or upgrade an older computer. In my case, my wife's computer's gotten too slow. She had a 500 gigabyte hard drive. It's completely filled up. She needs more space. She's complaining about how slow it is booting up. It's probably 6-7 years old, something like that. So I've decided what I'll do, instead of going out buying a new computer, which I could do fairly inexpensively, I have an old computer. This computer here used to be a gaming computer that I built like 8 years ago. It's now really doesn't have a life right now. I really don't have a purpose for it. It's a better case than my wife's old computer. So what I decided to do is take this 8-year-old computer, which has a perfectly good case. It's even got a neat little display down here that shows temperature, fan speed, and things like that. And it still looks pretty nice. Take this case and upgrade it. And the only problem with using an old case, you still may have some old technology. Like up here, I have USB and a FireWire that's old technology. It's USB 2. The FireWire I think is 400 instead of the new 800. That's not a big deal, because what I've done here already, when I was trying to extend the life of it, is I have some USB 3 ports up here that I can use, and I have a multimedia card slot. I still have a couple of DVD drives, so I don't have to buy those. I don't have to buy these. I don't have to buy the case. I don't have to buy a power supply. And basically what I'm going to do is replace the motherboard. So when you upgrade a computer, one of the big boosts that you get in the technology upgrades, the new technology, is supported by the motherboard. This motherboard has a H97 chipset, so it's one of the newer chipsets. It supports USB 3. It supports SATA 3, which is the 6 gigabytes per second. I still have the old SATA 2 here, which is 3 gigabytes per second. So I can double my hard drive speed with this. I can go to the USB 3, which is a lot faster than USB 2. And probably the biggest thing I can do is go to solid state drives. These are incredible. It's about a 10 times increase in performance and boot up speed versus the old mechanical drives. Now the old mechanical drives still have a purpose, because these SSDs are extremely expensive. They're quite a bit more than the mechanical drives. So what I do is use a relatively small SSD to put Windows on it, so it uses Windows to boot up. That will increase the speed at which it boots up, take much less time as opposed to the mechanical. But I still went ahead and bought a mechanical drive for storage. This is 3 terabytes. So she'd run out of space with 500 gigabytes, so we got plenty of space to last her a while. And this is, what is it? I think this is 200, yeah, here it is, 256 gigabytes, which is still a pretty good size. There's plenty of room for Windows to be installed on and a few other things. But what I would do once I get this installed, I will move all of my files onto the D drive, which will be the mechanical drive. So all the documents, all the pictures, especially the pictures and video files, I'll make sure they default to this drive instead of this drive, so it doesn't fill up. And some of the other things I'm getting a new processor. It's an Intel Core i5. It's not an i7, but it's still much faster than what she had. She had an old AMD processor, and much faster than what I had in here. And they've also gone to another upgrade in memory. They have faster memory now than when we built either one of these computers. And that's part of the motherboard purchase. It supports the faster memory. So I'm buying faster memory, I'm buying a faster processor. I have USB 3, I have the faster hard drive interface to SATA, and I have the SSD. So what I'll be doing is taking some of these parts out and replacing them with these new ones. Okay? Okay, here's a view of the old computer with all the old components in it. What I'm going to do now is start taking everything out. This is the video card right here. It was a really good video card at the time I built the computer. It may still be good enough to use today for my wife because she's really not a gamer, and it's probably a lot faster than anything that would be built into the motherboard. So I'm going to try to reuse the video card. This is also kind of a fancy heat sink for the CPU or the processor. So I may want to keep it too. It's kind of nice. It's copper. It's got LED fans. If I can figure out how to reinstall it on the new motherboard, if it will fit. If not, then I'll use the stock cooler that came with the CPU. The hard drives could be reusable. They're only 500 gigabytes each, but there might be a use for those. So I'll be careful when I remove those. Here's the power supply. It should be perfectly fine. I like the cabling that came with it, so I'll continue to use the same one. The fans, I'll evaluate the fans because I may have a few extras. I may want to replace some of these. But typically I'd probably leave the fans if they're functioning okay. One of the things I'm going to want to do is check my cables, the plugs down here that go to the case. Be careful when I'm removing those and make sure I have an idea where they go to when I install the new motherboard. But it looks pretty straightforward. This is a temperature sensor that came with one of the panels that I had. Came with the case, actually, the panel for the case. And so I want to be careful with those that I don't damage those. Other than that, things I want to be careful with, I'll probably use anti-static gloves or an anti-static strap, such as this that I can put around my wrist. The reason for that is you don't want static shock to discharge into one of your components because it could fry your component. So since these things are very expensive and gloves and these wristbands are very cheap, I tend to use them when I can, as long as it's not too encumbersome. So anyway, I'll go ahead and get started pulling these things out. Okay, one of the things also I do to make sure you don't want to lose any of your screws, so I get some kind of bowl to put the screw in, because you don't want to leave them laying on the table because they could easily get swept off onto the floor. So you want to be organized as to what you take out and make sure you don't lose anything, because they, in some cases, may be very hard to replace. Okay, so I'm going to unplug the video card. And there's the video card. It's a little dusty. All those cats we got in the house. Now I'm going to find a safe place to put this. Okay, this is a this is a Wi-Fi card that I put in this computer so that it can be moved around, so it wouldn't have to be attached to a cord. When I was trying to make use of this after I'd upgraded my own computer 2 years ago. So this would give me a little more flexibility where I put the computer without having to run a wire to it for the internet. I'm going to need this anymore. I'm pretty sure this is for the USB 3. So I'm going to put this where I can see it over here. Well, there's not a lot of room in here, to be quite honest. This case has a neat feature that none of my other cases have. There we go. Okay, here are the hard drives. I've unplugged them. They slide right out. Nice little carriers. So they're pretty easy to take out once you unplug them. So I just I have 4 of them in here. I'm only going to put 2 back, so I'll have fewer hard drives in the case when I'm done. The reason we're replacing the fans is because they are old. They were functioning just fine, but I happen to have a couple of extra ones in my spare parts kit. So we're replacing them because they do wear out eventually. The bearings can go bad, so I'm just going to go ahead and replace them. She ended up using screws, which worked a little better than the push pins, and it should be more secure now. Okay, here's the motherboard, the new one. Comes with its own back plate that fits this area, which is good because they're usually custom. These are. That's why they have one for each one. They also has the cables for the hard drive, so I don't need the old cables. These are SATA 6 anyway, and these were not SATA 6, so I don't know if these would work or not. So all I got to do, I got a nice little tray here I can work on, which I like, even though it's kind of hard to get in and out of the case. There's several screws that hold down the motherboard. All I need to do is start taking them out. Now, since I'm not going to be using this motherboard anymore, I don't need to be all that cautious. I think that's it. Yep. And it lifts right off. Now, one of the reasons they have cutouts in these base plates is so that, see, for me, I need to be able to access the back of this for this mount. This mount that I bought requires an attachment to the back side of the motherboard. Unfortunately, they don't have anything there. See, this allows it to just come right off. Well, not that good. See, you can put it on like this. I can play music. Okay, well, this is removed. This is done, and this is what we have left. Okay, question is, are we going to use this? What do you think? Now my question is, will that work? Looks like that'll work. Why don't you hand me the CPU? Wow, that's a little fan. This is the fan that comes with the Intel i5 processor. Now this would just sit right like that. And that would be it. Or we can put this monster on it. This has already got the sealant on it, the thermal paste. Now I have thermal paste here that I can use, but this fan has already got thermal paste applied to it. And what that does is ensure that the heat sink of the fan is in perfect contact with the CPU. That way you get perfect transfer of heat from the CPU to the radiator here that dissipates the heat so it can cool down. Because if the processor gets too hot, it can hurt performance, and it can actually ruin the processor itself. Okay, one thing, since I've taken this out of the case, one thing to try to remember is which side is the front. And this is the front, this is the back. You want to make sure that when you line this up, that you have the back against the back of the case. Now most motherboards don't have removable trays, so that's not going to be a big issue for most people. Now one thing I did have to decide before I screw this down is if I was going to use the old cooling fan or the new one. Now the old one's really cool and it's copper, and it's got a little light that turns on. And that's all nice and fun, but it's kind of heavy. And I have to remove the old paste, and I'd have to apply new thermal paste. And that's a little bit tricky. You're supposed to like use a credit card to get a nice smooth application. So that can be a little tricky. This that came with the CPU, didn't cost me anything, is already applied nice and neatly. And I know it's the right amount and it's done the right way. So just to avoid any confusion, and since I'm not going to be overclocking the CPU, it's not going to be getting that hot, I'm going to use this because it's just easier to do. So because I decided that, I don't have to put this on the back. Now if I was using that, I would have to put this on the back of the motherboard so I could screw this top part in. Okay, like that, to hold it. Since I'm using this, I don't have to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and screw the motherboard onto the plate. And this is hard to do with gloves. In this case, this motherboard is not as big as the one I had, so there's more space over here than there was on the other one. So there should be a little more room to work around. This is the CPU. This is what we paid big money for. You can see the CPU. That's the downs. This is the side that goes down. This is the side that goes up. Okay, one thing you don't want to do is touch this at all. Okay, I'm going to read this. This is the little book that comes with the processor. It tells you how to install the CPU. It tells you how to install the heatsink and fan. There's a little mark on one corner of the CPU, and it's a little gold or yellow mark. Also on this cover there's a mark, so it's showing the orientation. Plus there's a couple of notches at the top, so this really only is supposed to go in one way. And I think it only really can, so don't ever try to force it. These pins are very delicate, don't ever touch them. If you have cats in the house, make sure they aren't fixing to jump up on the table like ours did a few minutes ago. And I'm going to just drop this straight down on top. And there it goes, it fit perfectly. And in the instructions it says to remove the cover before you put it down. And this cover doesn't want to come off. I don't know. There it goes. Okay, the cover's off. And this slides under this screw here and just latches down. So that should be it. Should be the CPU is in place and all ready to go. Alright, the only other thing we need to do is put this on top. So, I'm not real sure how to do that, so I'm going to read the instruction manual and see what it says about putting the fan and the heat sink on. There's instructions there. I'm not sure about this, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to put it close to the fan plug, which is right here. So I'm going to line up these holes. Hope I get this done right. And I think I just push it on and then screw it to lock it down. Alright. I think that's it. I think I just pushed it on. Then I'll plug in the CPU fan, which is 4 pins. They have a 3-pin and a 4-pin. And I will use the 4-pin. That should be it. Hopefully, that really went easy. hopefully that's it. Okay, the motherboard comes with a book. Tells you everything about installing anything that you need to put on the motherboard. It actually talked about installing the CPU. Would have been good if I'd read this book really before I had installed it. I only read the Intel booklet. This booklet actually had a little more information in it than the Intel did because it's specific to this motherboard. So that's helpful information. One of the things it tells you also is how to pair the memory. Typically, you want to put your memory together in pairs. And I bought these in pairs, so they should be well matched. They should be perfectly matched. And these are DDR3 memory modules. This motherboard only takes DDR3, so if I put a DDR2 in it, it could damage the motherboard. So make sure you're using the right memory for the motherboard that you have. And make sure you open these little latches before you try to slide it in. That's one of the nice things about having this removable tray. It's real easy to get to these things rather than trying to reach inside a case with the motherboard already attached. Now, they put these in pairs, so blue and black go together. So I'm going to do blue because that's A1, B1 in this motherboard. And these are notched, so they only go in one direction. I can't turn this in backwards and put it in. So make sure the notch is on the right side. I can see it's on the left. Make sure these little notches are open all the way before you try to slide the memory in. So I'm just going to do the back one first. And just line it up good, make sure it slides in, and then push it until the latches latch themselves up. Okay, I've got the next ones open. Make sure I have the notch on the right side. Slide it in the slot gently. And once I know it's lined up perfectly, I'll firmly push it until the latches pop back up. So those are in now nice and securely. I think the red looks nice. I really like red. It really adds contrast to the motherboard. Alright, the only thing we have left now is to put the tray with the motherboard back in the case. Then we're ready to start putting it back together. Okay, one of the things you need to be sure and do is remove the old back plate, and it just pops right out. Here's the old one that I had in here. Here's the new one in here. You need to make sure it goes in the right direction. So what I'll do to make sure, turn this the same direction, make sure that lines up, and it looks like it does. So it goes that direction. So all I got to do is push it in from the inside. You got to be careful because they're real thin. Be sure and get it all the way in nice and tight. So I had this oriented the right direction. Hopefully I've got a little more room now than I did before. Okay. Alright, I got it in. I have it in the right slot. So I just need to push it back. There we go. So it is now slid into place. I need to put the screws that bolt down that tray back into place so it doesn't pop back out when I'm trying to plug something in the back. So if you have a tray like this that's removable, which most of them probably don't nowadays, it's good to make sure you get it screwed in nice and tight so when you plug things in the back like your video card, you're not moving your motherboard around. So that's it. I've got the new motherboard in. You can see it's much smaller. There's a lot of space left, which is great. Gives us a little more room to work. Okay, one of the things you need to know about fans when you're installing fans is what direction is the wind blowing. You want to blow this way or that way, and this one has a nice little arrow that shows the wind blows this way. So that's good because I want the cold air to come in here, blow across my CPU, which is the hottest part, and I guess my video card, and then it's going to get sucked out because I have a fan on top that's blowing out. So it's going to go that way. And I have a fan in the front, so it's going to go that way too. So it's all good if I have it this direction. So that's what I'm going to put in next. Okay, I've gone ahead and connected the wires from the case for the power button, so you can turn it on and off, and the headers for the reset button, and the power light, and the hard drive light. So those are here. Those are kind of tedious to do, so I didn't film it, because you have to pick individual wires to plug into those pins that are sticking up. Next thing I'm going to do is install the video card. This is the old video card that I had. I think it's still a good video card. It's a GeoForce 8800 GTS. It certainly was a good one when I put it in. Hopefully that's still a good card. At least it should be better than the graphics that came with the motherboard. If they're not, then we'll take it out. Or if it doesn't work, hopefully we got drivers and all that. Okay, one thing I needed to plug in, since this video card is a big one, it requires an additional power supply to be plugged in, so that's what this is. It's a 6-pin connector, and I'm doing that next. I'll plug it right into the end here. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do, this is the main power supply for the motherboard, and I'm plugging it in next. And it should go in just one way only. Okay, so that's plugged in. Okay, I have an 8-pin connector over here. This needs to go in. Here's the pin, the power connector that goes into it. So that goes in there. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is plug in my USB 3. You know, the front panel that I showed you earlier, that I can't really show you right now because it's laying down. Anyway, the USB panel, that's what this plug goes into, so I'm going to plug it in. Alright. This may not be as neat as I had it before. Okay, now this are the other normal USB ports that I had. The USB 2.0. That will go in the front. HD audio right there. Okay, HD audio is plugged in. First thing we'll do, we'll take the old hard drive, take the mounting bracket off. And I may have put these in backwards to begin with, but it was convenient, so I think I'll do it the same way this time. And here's the old 500 gigabyte. Here's the new 3 terabyte. And you just need to get the holes to line up. Just like that. Like I said, I'm probably doing this backwards. I think the power should probably go in the back, but I already have this set up with the power in the front, so it should work okay. I mean, it has for 8 years, so why change now? Okay, where do I put it? Well, there's lots of empty slots. I'll just put it here. This one may get the hottest, so I'll kind of put it in the middle. And the next one to do will be the solid state drive. Alright, here's the solid state drive. You can see it's a lot smaller than a regular drive. So here, for comparison, you can see the difference in size and weight is considerable. Now, the question is, how do we want to mount it, or how can we mount it on here? This is an older style of hard drive mount, so this may not work. Okay, it so happens I have a 3.5 inch hard drive converter for solid state drives. Hopefully this will work. It's not made exactly for this bracket, but hopefully it'll work. We'll see. If I can get this bracket to fit in here. Aha! I think it will. Then what I'll do is put the solid state drive here and then attach the bracket to the bracket. Something like that. And hopefully that will work. What we need to do now is connect the SATA. Okay, so the bottom one's 0, top one's 1. We want our boot drive to be 0. That'll be the first one it recognizes. So we want the solid state drive to be 0. So I'm going to plug it in here. Oh, by the way, we had to bend the bracket a little bit to get it to fit. It wasn't a good solution, but it's a workable solution. Your more modern cases will have solid state drive brackets. This didn't. I used what I had available and made it work. It wasn't the best thing to do, but okay, 0 is plugged into the SATA drive. We're in good shape there. Now that's the SATA connection. That's the data going from the hard drive to the computer and back. Okay, there's also power connections. I have to have a power connector. So there's a power connector here. Goes in a certain way. And a power connection here that goes in a certain way. Alright, they both have power. And done, we have the hard drive in here, the power plugs plugged into the hard drive. I put a little tie wrap here to hold this since it's really not in very good, but it's in pretty secure now with the tie wrap. Also tie wrap this to make, just to kind of button things up a little bit. That's it. Okay. Just gotta put the screws on, plug it in, see if it fries. By the way, make sure you turn off your power supply when you're doing this. Okay, we got everything put together. It's in the box. I have it plugged in. I turned on the power on the power supply. So now I just need to push the button and see if it turns on. Reboot and select proper boot device. That's encouraging. I have Windows 8.1. I'm going to put Windows 8 in the DVD drive. I'm going to get the 64-bit Windows. I don't want the 32. Had a sound on one of the fans, so we changed it around. Hopefully they'll make it sound better. Power is on. No clacking. No clacking, that's good. So I'm checking to make sure all the fans are turning, including the cooler for the CPU. And they do appear to be turning. So that is good. Display is working in the front, that's pretty cool looking. You already have Windows in here. And it appears to be reading. Windows 8 came up. Okay, what I did, I had Windows 8 in the DVD drive, turned on the computer, and it automatically started installing. So that's pretty good. That means the BIOS and everything figured out what we had. And we're going to install Windows 8. Now, what we want to do is put it on the SSD drive. And that might be a challenge. First of all, we got to put the key. The key came on a card, so we'll do that. Alright, I don't want to upgrade because there's no operating system on my computer, so I can't do that. So it's kind of a silly option to give me. So I'm going to do custom install. And here are my two drives. I had to reformat my drive 0 because it wasn't formatted with the right type of partition. Karen, what kind of partition did it need?
MBR, Master Boot Record.
MBR is what it needs, and what did it have?
GPT.
GPT, which I had no idea what GPT is. That's what it was. So we're going to use drive 0. We plug that into the drive 0, the 0 SATA drive. It's 238.5 gigabytes. So we know that's our 256 minus a few gigabytes drive. And this is our 3 terabyte drive, which is 2,794 gigabytes. And there we go. It's starting in to copy the Windows files. Once it is done, I will store the disk safely away, and I will label this for this computer, so I'll always know where this software is supposed to be installed at. So it's always good to keep a copy of your Windows software and write on it which computer it's installed on, so you don't get mixed up in case you need to go back and reinstall Windows or do a repair or something else. So that's it.